Alright, how's everybody doing today? First off, I want to apologize for the glare. Trying to get as much light in as possible. And then, I'm kind of coming down with a cold. So if I sound a little bit stranger than usual, that's why. But, the show must go on. I wrapped up everything I wanted to test, and it's time to shoot. So, here we go. Today I'm doing my full review of the Galaxy Note 3 or Samsung Galaxy Note 3, and I've been using it for a little bit over a week, and here's my honest opinions of it. Now, before we get into the phone, just want to talk about this flip case here by PT1 Impactology. Think I'll throw the link up in the description if I can find it. It's a pretty solid case. Minimal protection on the bottom and the top, but it's a pretty solid case. And it also does really good doubling as a kickstand. So, watching movies or whatever in this, I mostly used it for watching movies. It was really good. And when it's closed, got that extra protection on the screen, so that was nice. Now what I would have wished for, and it might have been cool if I had a little spot to put like my credit cards and my ID. That way, instead of just grabbing my wallet and the phone, I just grab my important stuff out of my wallet, a little bit of money, my ID, some of my credit cards, put them all in here, and I know it's all with my phone. This way, once I grab one thing, I know I have everything. So that would have been nice, but it is what it is. The case came with the phone. I don't know the exact price, but I'll find it and throw the link up in the description. Now, moving on. Throw this off to the side. Now, let's get to the phone here. And I must say, it's been a quite solid device with one or two downsides. But, let's get into this. Let's talk about the build quality. Now, it's plastic. It looks like a leather material. And they got little stitched edges. So it looks really good. And I must say, doesn't creak, doesn't make any noise, and it feels quite solid in the hand. A little light, but I think that's just because I'm coming from phones with a lot bigger batteries, so I got used to that heavier weight from the bigger batteries. Even the Blue Studio over there, it's off camera, you can't really see it. That feels a lot more substantial in the hand, but I think that's due to the bigger battery. But it feels solid. Now, so the build quality is pretty good. Now, yes, I don't know if y'all can see, this is a used unit, so there is some dings, and you know, it's not perfect, but it does not affect the usage of the phone whatsoever. There's a screen protector on here, kind of messed it up, but it keeps my screen safe somewhat. So I just leave it, even though it's messed up, I just leave it. Other than that, the build quality is good, really good. Now, moving on, let's talk about the display in this guy. And up front, dead center here, you have a 5.7 inch Super AMOLED display. And I believe it has a pixel density of, was it 386 or 388? Let me double check that real fast. Yeah, I know I took my SIM out of this because I didn't want to get any interruptions like in the first impressions video. Let me just clear all this out. So I took my SIM out. I figured it makes it a lot more streamlined. So let's see. Display wise, we're looking at, yep, 386 on the screen density. So, and it's a full HD display. So yeah, and I must say, guys, at 5.7 inches, at this display size, it is really, really good. YouTube videos, movies, everything looks very crisp and very clear on this guy here. And now I see why people make a lot of gripes about why, well, it's not 1080p, it's not 1080p. I understand that now. Does that change my opinion on whether everything should have 1080p? No, because there are some pretty solid 720p panels out there. And although it's nice, you know, you go with the 720p panel and you get a little bit better battery life, you know, and it looks just as good. So display wise, the display is pretty solid. Now, moving along, let's talk about some of the hardware and the software in this guy. Now, hardware wise, we're looking at 3 gigs of RAM with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor, clocked at 2.5 gigahertz, I believe. So it actually runs very smoothly, and I think you know, it was really smooth. Now, software wise, and you have micro SD expansion up to 64 gigs. And I I took it out, I put it in the other phone. But I did have a 32 gig card in here, didn't have any issues with my music or movies or any of that. And it does have a removable battery, which is 3,200 milliamps, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the battery life section. But now, software wise, let me cover a little bit more of the hardware. We have a I think it's a 2 megapixel camera in the front with a notification LED and your sensors. Got your physical home button here, back and menu. And then on the back, you have your 13 megapixel camera with LED flash. Now, I'm going to cover more of this as we move on. Now, moving on to the software, we're running Android 4.4.4, which is KitKat, and it's got the TouchWiz skin running over it. So you have all of your TouchWiz features. You got your foldering, all that good stuff. Your widgets are broken up quite nicely here. And, you know, you can't just drag and drop to make a folder. You actually have to come up here and go make a folder to make a folder. So, you know, a little bit extra steps here and there, but it is what it is. And if I must say, it runs fairly smoothly. I haven't had any issues with it. Now, some other features that TouchWiz adds on top of KitKat or Android here is that you have all of these extra features in here. Let me get to them. You got all these extra motion features. Now, pretty much the ones I don't use, I turned off. And then you have your S Pen down here, but I'm gonna get to that. So I use AirView. It actually comes in handy, and I also use some of these other motions here and palm swipe to capture a screenshot. That's actually pretty nice. That way you don't have to hassle with pressing the button combination to take a screenshot. Just do your palm swipe, and that works pretty good. And pretty much everything else that I don't use, I turned off. So there's only certain stuff in the S Pen that I used. Mostly everything else I turned off. And probably one of the biggest features that I like the most on this Note 3 here is the dual window feature. And I must say, for productivity and getting stuff done, being able to drop stuff in 2 windows is, you know, there's nothing else like it. Then you go a step further and you throw in the S Pen here. And I must say, the S Pen with all of its features and the dual window, that pretty much puts this phone over the top for me. So that is pretty cool. And you know, surprisingly, I found myself, you know, after you actually use it, shout out to your boy Flossie Carter, because you know, he said multiple times in a lot of his reviews, you actually have to use something to determine if you really like it and if, you know, if it's really a feature for you. And so after using the S Pen and these features, I must say that it's going to be a little tough for me going on to other phones, but it is what it is. Especially the screen write feature. As y'all know, it was Black Friday a couple days ago, and I shared a few deals with you guys, and I was sharing a few deals with family as well. And that screen write feature, that came in such handy, I almost couldn't believe it. So that right there, along with the multi-window, I must say this phone, software-wise, phone is a beast right here. Let me see, it's kind of hard to do this behind the camera, sorry y'all. But, moving on, you pretty much have all of your KitKat features, minus you don't have, I don't think you have users on this. And then it's skinned quite heavily. Now, let's move on. So, let's talk about some of the glitches, stutters, and crashes in this guy. Now, like I said previously, the software has been fairly smooth. I rarely ever had any, stutteriness or lag. But, one big thing, and this is actually why my friend, oops, I went to the wrong thing, sorry y'all. Why my friend actually ended up selling me the phone is, if we go in here, I took a few screenshots, is the reception. Let me let that go away. The reception tends to bounce around quite a lot. And they're on Cricket, so a lot of the times she really wasn't getting service, and you know that was a big issue for her. Now I actually went in, because you know I noticed that it was bouncing around a lot for me too, and she had this phone unlocked, so it's supposed to work. Once you get it unlocked, it's just supposed to work, you know. So I put my T-Mobile SIM in here, and I was getting 4G LTE. Now, it was working good. Now, it tended to bounce around just a little too much. So, what did I do? I went in, and I went into the service mode here. Let me see. Went into the service mode, and I would not recommend, messing around with this unless you're comfortable with it. I went into the service mode, and I tweaked it so it runs on the bands better for T-Mobile. You know, it ran smoothly for a few days, and I'm thinking, okay, problem solved. But then, I'm using it, and then all of a sudden the service starts bouncing around. And I'm like, oh man, I thought I fixed this, but I guess not. So every so often it'd bounce around, or I lose service, or I'd be on a phone call and get disconnected. So I went in and I tweaked it again, and I'm like, okay, my bad. That's that My Magazine feature. I don't really use that. That's why I didn't touch that. So I tweaked it again, and I'm thinking, okay, let me just go with the 3G and the HSPA Plus. So that's what I was using. I used the 4G LTE for like 4 days. Then it started bouncing around way too much. So I just tweaked it a bit, tweaked it again. I went into service mode and I tweaked it again. And I've been using 3G HSPA Plus. Now, other than that, guys, there have been no other glitches, stutters, or crashes of any kind. And is that a deal breaker? No, because that just means I have to be hooked up to Wi-Fi in a lot more places than I usually would have to be. Or, you know, I go in there and I tweak some settings and I get it to run right. So, that's that. That kind of took a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I just had to let you guys know. Now, moving along, let's talk about the Wi-Fi in this guy. Now, this guy has Wi-Fi 802.11 BGNN, not AC, but it does have dual band, so you do have support for your 5 gigahertz band here. And as you can see, that's what I'm connected to, because my router supports 5 gigahertz, and I must say I'm getting some phenomenal speeds here. Now, before we do the YouTube test, let me just go in and show you some of the Wi-Fi speeds I was getting. Now, I do have 2 of these, because one was after I tweaked the data, so you can see the top part is after I tweaked the data, and then that's running on my Wi-Fi. And then I did one from earlier before I tweaked anything, just so I could see the changes. So you see, after I tweaked stuff to my liking, I actually got a lot better performance. And you know, sometimes as an average user, you don't want to have to do that. But sometimes you got to get your hands dirty and tweak a few things. So, it is what it is. There it goes. You guys saw. Now, moving on. The Wi-Fi actually runs great. And let's load up a little YouTube video here for you guys to see. And the other good thing is that these YouTube videos, they stream in 1080p. So let's play a few seconds of this headphone video. Alright, how's everybody doing this evening? Just so you guys can see. So yeah, this evening we have an unboxing of the Skull Candy H2 wireless Bluetooth headphones. But before I show you what's in the box, because I did crack it, make it easier to deal with. So before I show you what's in the box, just want to give a little backstory. First of all, big thanks goes out to my nephew, because I don't know if... Alright, so as you guys have seen, the Wi-Fi runs almost perfect. Almost perfect. Now, I had an issue, yeah, I guess you can call it an issue, on my 5 gigahertz band, streaming 1080p. The phone did tend to hiccup just a touch, about once or twice, but it didn't happen more than 3 times. That's why I was kind of hesitant to bring it up, but I figured, what the hell, it did happen, so I might as well bring it up. That's why when I went in to show y'all the quality of video, it was on 480, because it runs very smoothly on 480, and you know, the picture quality isn't any better or worse. Still get very great picture quality. So Wi-Fi wise, this thing is a beast. It runs almost perfectly, as I've said. So moving on now, let's talk about some of the bands in this guy. And you guys hold on to your hats, because I gotta get over here on my computer real quick just to make sure I get all these bands correct, because this supports a lot of bands. And you know what? I'm gonna do something a little extra for you guys. And if you have the other models, I'm gonna tell you those bands as well. So, talking about connectivity here, let's just start from the top. So connectivity wise, when it comes to bands, you have support for 850, 900, 1800, 1900, and that's GSM. And then the other one is 850, 900, 1900, 2100, and then LTE bands. And y'all hold on to your seats. You have support for 700, band 17, 800, band 18, 850, band 5, 900, band 8, 1700 and 2100, band 4. So that's T-Mobile and AT&T for you guys, if y'all know those bands by heart, as I do, because I've reviewed a lot of stuff by now. 1800, band 3, 1900, band 2. And fun note, band 2 and band 5 are for, they're also for AT&T, but they're for Cricket, which runs off AT&T's towers. That's a fun little note. Now, moving on here, got some bands for some other models. And just want to pull those up real fast. So, okay. Alright, if you have the N9005, then you have support for band 1, 2100, band 3, 1800, band 5, 850, band 7, 2600, band 8, 900, band 20, which is 800 again, band 2, as I said earlier, band 4, as I said earlier. And then that also goes for if you have model N900W8. Now, yeah, those are all the bands. It's quite a hefty list of bands. Whew. It's crazy. Now, this is a Verizon model, so I only had support for band 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 13. But as I said, I had to disable the LTE because it bounced it around way too much. So, but those are all the bands for you guys. I'm kind of out of breath. I'm even more out of breath because I don't feel well, but had to do it. So, moving along, we get to the GPS in the sky. And I must say, guys, because y'all know I'm not too directional savvy, the GPS was great. For lack of a better word, the GPS was great. Didn't have any issues. Didn't lose connection. Rerouted when I needed to, when I did a wrong turn or something like that. Didn't have any issues with the GPS. And, you know, I'm actually considering getting a car mount, because I do think I'm going to keep this guy around. And I might want to get a car mount so I can mount it in my car. That way I don't really have to hassle with it. Because I did get a new car and my cup holders are not big enough for it to fit in there. So I might want to invest in the car mount. But GPS wise, the GPS was great. Now, moving on, let's talk about the call quality in here. Y'all already had a sample of the speakers when I played the YouTube video. Speakers are quite good. But call quality wise, and maybe this is just me, because it's kind of a big phone, I did have an issue trying to line my ear up and the mic up in the right spot, people said they had a little bit of issue hearing me. It's because I realized that my head's not that big, so it's kind of hard for me to put the phone in the right spot so everything could work how it's supposed to. But other than that, that's just me. You guys might not have that issue. If y'all know how to hold it, I had a few issues with that, but after a while, I figured out how to hold it. So that was just a little hiccup that I had. But call-wise, not having any issues with this guy. Now, I did have some issues with it dropping calls, but that was mostly because the I think the LTE kept bouncing around. But when I did get a solid connection, calls were good, and people said they could hear me good, and it was crisp. Now, when I held the phone wrong, they said it sounded like I was in a tunnel. But like I said, my head is small, and that's kind of an issue you deal with when you have bigger phones. And like I said in my Blue Studio 6.0 review, Mom's had that same issue when she had her phone. Mom's, bless her heart, rest in peace, Mom. She had that same issue when she had that phone. You just gotta know how to hold it. You learn how to hold it. So, and just in case I didn't cover it, I think I might have missed it. Speakers are on the bottom. And trust me, that is way better than on the back. If you're going to put it anywhere that's not the front, you put it on the bottom or the top. But preferably, please put them on the front. But if you're not going to, at least it's on the bottom. That makes it a little bit easier to deal with. Now, that does make it easier to muffle when you're playing games, but you learn how to hold it. So, speaker calls, I'm sorry guys, I got a little off on a tangent there. Speaker calls were actually quite great. And the thing I like about Samsungs is that when you're in a call, you can do, it's like a volume booster or amplifier. So there's that, so it boosts it even more. Didn't have to use it, but I just like the fact that it's there. So speaker calls and call quality in general was quite good. Now, moving along, because this video is getting kind of long, let's get into the cameras and the camera samples. Now, this guy right here has a 13 megapixel camera, which shoots in full 1080p. It's kind of hard to do from behind the camera, but you can also take photos up to 4128 by 3096. So that's a lot higher than 1080p, but you can do the full 1080p as well. Now, by default, it comes like this to give you the 16:9 full screen. I did have some samples like that, but I wanted to get some more with the full megapixel count, so I also have some samples like this. When you use the full megapixels, it's going to be 4:3, so you lose a little bit, but it is what it is. And you also have a bunch of camera features like tap in video to take a picture. You have all of your, Samsung's pretty heavy on the modes here. You have all of your modes here, including HDR. And really, I just pretty much left it in auto. As a regular person, I don't really want to have to fiddle through all of these modes. If I see an opportunity to take a picture I want to take, I just want to be able to pick up my camera, pick up my phone, or whatever camera I have on me, and take the picture. So a lot of these modes didn't really get used, but they're there if you like to use them. Also, my bad, didn't mean to come out. Also, I don't want it to be in sports mode. Let's go back to auto. Okay. Also, you could take a... Actually, I think, yeah. You could take a picture-in-picture. So, you could take a picture with the back while taking a picture with the front. So, that's pretty cool. And then you have pretty much the rest is standard. You got your filters, all that good stuff. You could take pictures using your voice. I have that turned off right now. Swap to the front. Now, when you swap to the front, I think it is 2 megapixels. Let me just double check real fast. Here, photo size. Yeah, it might be 2 megapixels. I'm not sure. Yeah, 2 or 3, one of those. But you still get your videos in 1080p. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's 2 megapixels. It says it right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah. So with the front or the back, you're really going to be taking some really good photos, no matter which camera you're using. Now, let's get into some samples here. And I must be honest with you guys. I took a lot more photos than I usually would. And, you know, my camera's not doing it justice right now, but these actually came out quite well. Quite well. And I must say, if I wasn't going to keep this phone for anything else, one of the biggest reasons I'd probably keep this phone was for the cameras. I mean, you get insane amounts of details. And that's good. Move on here. So, it's nice. You know what? It's really not doing it justice. If you guys leave me a comment, I'll upload some of the photos.